Hello and welcome. You're watching Geek Factor. My name is Paweł Kaczmarek, and in today's video I would like to present to you a how to play video for THORGAL, the card game. I apologize for my pronunciation. It's been a while since I shot an English language video. Now, THORGAL, the card game, is a game designed by Marcin Tomczyk and soon to be published by Lucrum Studio, which helped sponsor this video, for which I say thank you. Now, this is going to be a how to play video so that you know what the rules are. There is currently a campaign on Kickstarter that the campaign is already funded, so we know the game is going to be published. If after what you see here you figure out that the game is something you might be interested in, please follow the link you can find for the campaign that you can find in the description below. For now, let's just focus on the rules. So obviously, THORGAL, the card game, is a card game. It's a card-driven game. I need to make one strong caveat here, is that this is still a prototype, and there's actually quite a few changes that already happened to the design of the cards, for example, between the version that I have here and the version that will be the final version that you'll be able to get once you back the project. But don't worry, I'll mention those changes when they appear so that you're not confused as to what's what. Now, again, this is a prototype. Certain other things might change that I might not be yet aware of. As with every other Kickstarter or crowdfunding campaign, this is technically a work in progress. So things might change and they might slightly alter. But for those, please follow the updates on the campaign so to make sure that you stay up to date with any changes. Now, this is technically designed as a dueling game where it's one player versus another player. There is the option of playing it multiplayer, so for example a team play for 4 players, but for this video I'm going to focus on the 1 versus 1 mode of play. With that having said, let's get to the table and let's begin with the setup. So first thing you have to do is separate the cards into 4 factions that we have in this game. Now, there are 3 card types. There are the Bane cards, where the reverse looks like this, the Destiny cards, where the reverse looks like this, and these are the double-sided land cards. Now, there are 4 factions, like I said, in this game. Now, these factions are represented by symbols that can be found on these cards. For example, right here in the bottom left corner. Now, this symbol, for example, means that this is the faction of the Visitors. This is the faction of the Outlaws, this is the faction of the Lords, and this is the faction of the Vikings. Now, each player chooses one faction. Once they do that, they collect all cards from that faction. So let's say, for example, that for this tutorial, we decided to pick Vikings and Outlaws. So these two, all these go right back into the box. And then each player takes all of the cards assigned to their specific faction. So all of the Bane cards, all of the Destiny cards, and all of the land cards. Now each player takes the 2 player mats or player boards depending on which version of the game you'll be getting. And one of them is the Destiny mat and the other one is the Bane mat. You set them right in front of you with the Destiny one to the left and the Bane one to the right. Take all of the Bane cards assigned to your faction, give them a good shuffle, and then place it face down right here on the mat where it says Bane deck. Now with the Destiny deck, you'll be doing something very similar. However, first you will pick 2 companions and put them in the game from the get-go. Now before I do that, I have to tell you that the Destiny cards in your deck, they are divided into 3 categories. They are companions, supports, and events. Now, this is what I meant when I said that this is a prototype and not the final version, because in the version that I have, the only way to tell those apart is by the symbol right here in the top left corner. This is the symbol for companions, this is the symbol for support, and then this is the symbol for events. In the final version, the cards will look like you're seeing right now in the middle of the screen, with the name of the type of the card specifically written and stated below the picture. Now, the way you're supposed to pick those 2 companions that you want to begin with is you're supposed to go through all of the companions that you have in your deck and select 2 that cost no more than 3 destiny points. Now, what do I mean when I say that they cannot cost more than 3 destiny points? Well, each card has a cost, and that cost is depicted by those blue symbols right here in the top left corner of the card. So for example, all these cards that I have laid out over here, each of them cost 2 destiny points. So obviously I couldn't keep all of them. Now what I could do is, for example, keep this one and this one, because together they cost 3 destiny points. So let's say that this is what I choose to do. I put them both into play, and by that I mean I'm placing them in front of my mats. They don't have to be directly in front of the destiny mat, but let's just say that for now that's how I choose to place them. Then the rest of the destiny deck gets shuffled and placed right here on the spot where it says destiny deck on your mat. Now select which of you will be the first one to play as the destiny player. Now once you've done that, both players go through their land cards. Now please pay close attention that the symbol for your faction is right here near the name. It's one of the 2 symbols, but you will clearly see the symbol for your faction. So these are the Viking lands. Now each player picks 2 lands and they set them up in the middle of the playing area so that everybody can see. Now once both players have done that, the Bane player then goes through their remaining 3 cards and then select 2 additional cards to be placed along with the others. Now make sure they are laid down horizontally. Now the specific orientation of them does not matter. They can be laid down like this or like this, but just make sure that both players have easy and free access to them. Now finally, place the exhaustion tokens and the free attribute token pools nearby so that everybody also has free access to them. Now, as I said, this is a prototype version. They will not look like this in the final game. Okay, so after whenever I shoot the video, I like to begin with a brief overview. You kind of have this bird's eye view of the game and the components, and just giving you a basic tour, high level, very description of what's going on in the game, what's the goal of the game, so that you have all of that information in the back of your head once I keep going into the finer details of how specific rounds or phases are played out. So now let's take a look at the general overview of the gameplay, and also let's take a look at some of the cards, because since this is a card game, what you see on the cards is actually quite important. So this is what the game looks like set up for 2 players, which is the variant of the gameplay that I'll be going through today for you. Now, the first thing you have to understand is the duality of the gameplay and the duality of each of the players' characters and strategies and gameplays. Now, the winner is the one who gets to 3 victory points first. Those victory points are most commonly obtained when the lands are conquered and the journeys are successful. Whenever a journey is successful, the player who made the successful journey will receive this horn symbol, and that represents a victory point. And whoever gets to 3 victory points immediately wins the game. So this is what will be happening. The Destiny player will try to successfully perform journeys to the lands you see in the middle. The Bane player will try to stop that from happening. Now, what do I mean when I say duality of the gameplay? Now, during setup, I told you that we selected one of the players to be the first Destiny player, and then the second player became the Bane player. Now, they play through the first round as those, let's say, characters, forces. The Destiny player tries to make an attempt at one of those journeys, one of those lands, and make it successful. The Bane player will try to stop that from happening, like I said. Then the round will be over, we will see if the journey was successful or not, and whether it was successful or not, then the next round will begin, assuming it's not the end of the game yet. The next round will begin, and the roles will be swapped. Now, for the second round, this player will be the Destiny player trying to make a successful journey, while this player will become the Bane player trying to stop that successful journey from happening. This is the key concept of the game, and it's not a very complicated concept, but it's a key concept that I want you to have in the back of your head once I go through the rules in more detail. Now, the way to make those journeys successful is to meet the requirements of those journeys. Those requirements are represented by the symbol of the attributes you see on each of the cards right here. Each member of your party, of the companions that you play during setup and then when you play during the round, each of those members has some attributes that they provide. Now, additional attributes will be provided through additional card play and other cards' abilities, of course. Now, the Destiny player will have the goal of trying to match the demand by having those very symbols on their party. The Bane player will try to stop that by adding more symbols to the land to make it even more harder to complete. Now, the game is played over a series of rounds. The number of rounds is not specified because there is a very specific victory condition that has to be met. Like I said, 3 victory points, you immediately win the game. Now, the first phase of every round is called the God's Phase. This is where we'll be getting cards into our hand and getting cards into our Destiny and the Bane pools, trying to make resources that we can spend next phase. After the God's Fate phase, there will be the Dawn phase, where mostly the Destiny player will try to add more cards to their party, add more companions, or maybe add some support. After that, there will be the Journey phase. Now, this is the main phase, the meat of the game, where the players will take turns playing actions. For the Destiny player, the goal will be to match the symbols required by the land that they chose for this specific journey phase, and for the Bane player to make it as hard as possible. The final phase is the Dusk phase, which is a sort of a cleanup phase where we make the finals, where we make the cleanup. We also finally assess whether this journey was successful or not, and we prepare for the next game round if the game hadn't been won by that point. So that was obviously very high level. Now, before we get into more details, let's take a quick look again at the cards. So the Destiny cards and all of the Destiny cards are divided into 3 categories. We have companions, we have support, and we have events. Now, like I mentioned, in the version that I have, you can only tell those apart by the symbols in the top left corner. Now, finally, the cards will look like you see right now on the screen, so they will be much more clearer to distinguish. Bane cards don't really have anything else other than the word Bane on them and that symbol of the snake eating its own tail, because there really are one of a kind. There are no different kinds of Bane cards. The land cards, however, are two-sided. This is the side that represents the land that you want to perform a successful journey towards. In order to do that, you have to meet the required attributes that you see right here. If you do that, the card gets flipped and then it gets placed vertically between the players so that the horn symbol is facing towards the player that performed the successful journey. And the Fenris symbol is facing the Bane player, who unfortunately was unable to stop all that from happening. Now, this will be a one-time benefit for the player who successfully completed the journey, and this will be an ongoing ability that the Bane player will have the option of using on future turns. Now, as far as the cards themselves, let's go back to the Destiny pool here, the Destiny cards. Basically what's going to happen is, like I said, you're gonna have the companions and you're gonna have the support cards that are gonna be in your party, and they're gonna stay in there unless they are somehow removed. But they can stay in your party for quite a long time, and they will be trying to make all of the journeys successful by providing the symbols or other unique abilities. Event cards are one-time plays. You play an event card, you resolve its ability, and then you place it on the discard pile. Bane cards are similar. If they are played in a phase other than Journey phase, then you resolve the ability, you always pay the cost. Whenever you play the card, you always pay the cost. You'll see how you pay the cost in a few seconds. Then it gets simply discarded. If you play a Bane card during the Journey phase, then that card will also be added to the land to make completing that journey even more difficult. Now, on the cards, you will see the names of the phases where you can play them. So, for example, if I have those cards laid out in front of me, the support and the companion, and I'm going through the game and I see that one of them says dawn and another one says dusk. That means that during those phases, during the action window of those phases, I will be able to use those abilities. If, on the other hand, I have an event card, then it's not placed in front of me. But still, I have to read which phase of the game I can play it in. So for example, with this card, I can pick. I can either play it during the journey phase or during the dusk phase. Either way, during the window action, on my turn, I say, okay, I'm playing this card, I'm paying its cost, and then I'm resolving its ability and placing it in the discard pile. Similar thing goes with Bane cards. As far as other icons on the cards, like here or here, you really don't have to be too concerned with these because, well, there are names assigned to these symbols, but you really don't have to remember them because anytime those symbols will come into play, you will be able to tell that you need a symbol. For example, like this one. You have another this in your party, right? So other than this card, you should have another card that has this symbol right over here. So you do not really need to learn the name of what those symbols represent in order to be able to play. Okay, so like I said, no specific number of rounds because there's a very specific victory condition. Now, each round consists of 4 phases. The first of those phases is called the God's Fate phase. In this phase, we will be able to get cards into our hands and build our resource pool to be able to pay for those cards later on. So the God's Fate phase is rather quick and you play it simultaneously. You don't have to wait for the other player to finish their turn before you play yours. What happens here is we get to build our hand and our resource pool. Both players do that. So the Destiny player will build the Destiny pool and the Bane player will build the Bane pool. Now the way that happens is you have 7 fate points to spend. Now those points are virtual, they are not represented by any physical component in the game. The way you spend those points is you first spend 1 point to draw 1 card from your deck, Destiny or Bane, into your hand, and then once you've decided you have enough cards in your hand, you spend the remaining points to build up your pool. So for example, I spend the first, and you always have to do it in that order. First, cards to your hand, then the pool. So let's say we begin here, I'm the Destiny player, so the first point, I take this card, I like it, but I want more cards in my hand. I spend the second point to get this one. Okay, pretty cool. And the third point, I also spend to draw the card from the Destiny deck. Okay, I have 3 cards. I'm perfectly happy with them. Then I'll say that the remaining 4 points I spend to build up my resource pool. So I take 4 cards from the top of the deck and I place them right here. Now what will happen with that is you will use those cards as resources to pay for other cards when playing them. This is why every card on the reverse has the same symbol that represents the cost of playing the card right here near the top left of each card. The Bane player does something exactly similar. So let's say they chose 4 cards to keep in their hand and then they have 3 points left and they use them to create a Bane pool of 3 resources. So after the God's Fate phase, we come to the Dawn phase. Now in this phase is mostly for the Destiny player because this is the phase where the Destiny player will have a chance to add cards to their party in order to be able to meet the objectives of the journey. Okay, so this is very important because this is something that's going to be true for the rest of the game. Now, whenever there's an action window, players perform those actions one after another, one action after another. Now, if one player passes, then the turn goes back to the other player. If that player performs an action, the turn goes back to the first player, and if they want to, they can unpass, so to speak, and they can perform another action. But if somebody passes and then the next player also passes, then that action window is over. Now, what actions can players play during the Dawn phase? Now, for both players, they can use the abilities on the cards that specifically say that they can be played during the Dawn phase. For the Destiny player, now those will probably be cards on their companions or on their support. For the Bane player, it will be on cards similar to the one you're seeing right now on the screen. But later in the game, when the Bane player has some cards turned, land cards turned like this towards them, they may also have, those cards may also have Dawn's abilities that can be played during the Dawn phase. Just remember, playing that ability, resolving that ability is a single action. Now, this is a good time to mention that some of the cards have this symbol right before the name of the phase and then the main text of the ability. That means that in order to use that ability, you have to exhaust it. The way you do that is you take an exhaustion token from the pool and you place it on the card so that you know that this has been used and cannot be used again until all of the exhaustion tokens from that card are gone. Yes, it is possible that through various card effects, a single card will have more than one exhaustion token on it. So once again, for both players, it is an action to resolve an ability on the cards in front of them, like land cards for the Bane player, or support or companion cards for the Destiny player, as well as the one-time plays from their hands, like the Bane cards for the Bane player, or the event cards that have the word Dawn on them for the Destiny player. But the Destiny player has one more key action that they can perform during this very phase. And this is where they expand their party. So like I said, the Destiny playing a card is an action. So for example, let's say that the Destiny player wants to add another companion to their party. So let's say they want to add, what's his name? Hunter, sorry, just Hunter. So he has to, in order to play that card, they have to pay the cost. In this case, it's 2 resources. They take as many resources from the appropriate pool, in this case, that's the Destiny pool, right? And they place it in the Destiny discard pile, face down. And this is very important to understand, that the Dawn phase is the only time where you can add cards to your party, support or companion. This is the only time, and you have to be the Destiny player, obviously, to do that. So the Bane player takes care of their Bane cards, but they don't play any cards in front of them because they're not the Destiny player. The Destiny player makes their party bigger, and this is the only time during the game where they can do that. During any other points in the game, they cannot add new companions or new support cards to the party. So make sure you understand that and make sure you choose very carefully which cards to play and which cards to keep for later when you play during the Dawn phase. And listen, I cannot stress this enough because this is very important to remember for when you're planning which cards to play, which cards to keep. The Dawn phase is the only phase of the game where the Destiny player gets to add support and companion cards to their party. This only happens during the Dawn phase. So if you're thinking about saving a companion to add to the party later on during the journey phase, it's not gonna work because you can't do that. So please remember, companions, support, those can only be added to the party during the Dawn phase. After the Dawn phase, however, comes the journey phase, which is really the meat of the game. This is where most of the stuff happens, because this is where the Destiny player will pick one of the lands and try and conquer it. And then the Bane player will try to stop that from happening. This will happen through so-called action windows. Now, action window is something that you will hear more than once during this video. Action window is essentially a moment in the game where the players play actions one after the other, one action each. Now, an action can either be playing a card, like for example in the Dawn phase, that technically was an action window for the Destiny player because he was playing cards or she was playing cards. But for the rest of the game, it can be playing cards like event cards, which don't stay in the game, or resolving the abilities of already played cards in play. So, for example, for the Bane player, those might be some land cards who were conquered, and he or she can use those abilities. Or, for example, for the Destiny player, there are some companions and support cards that can be used during various phases as actions. So this is what happens in an action window. One action after another until both players pass. Then the action window closes. So, and this is how the Destiny player will try to complete the journey, and this is how the Bane player will try to stop them. So, let's see how to resolve the journey phase. Right, so in order to clearly explain this, I rearranged the cards on the table a little bit to make it easier for me to explain it to you in a tight shot. So the journey phase is played through a series of steps. The very first step is for the Destiny player, and you can see their party right over here. The Destiny player chooses which land they want to do the journey towards, which they want to attempt the journey towards. Now, let's say they decide to go here. Does that make much sense? Well, let's see. For now, the attributes that are required to make this journey successful are, or you know what, let's take this card, because this is actually quite easier for them to attain. So the attribute cost are those two, one and one of each from those type. Now, as you can see, as of right now, the Destiny player satisfies those requirements, because 2 axes right here, and then 1 symbol here and 1 symbol here. So actually we have 1 spare symbol right here on this card. So that's a good sign. So let's say the Destiny player picks this land to attempt the journey towards. So for now I'm going to remove those to the side so as not to create a chaos during the shot. Now, once the Destiny player made the choice, the Bane player can now pick one of their party members to oppose the journey. And this is the only time that the Bane player will touch any cards other than the Bane cards. So let's say that the Bane player decides to put right here Priest of Aegir right as the opposing force for completing this journey. So THORGAL goes back to the Bane player's party. Now, the way that happens is you pretty much ignore everything that's on the card. You only add the symbol from the party to the demands, the attribute cost of the specific land. So right now, the requirements to make the journey successful are 2 of those symbols, 2 of these, and 1 of those. And another thing to remember is that if this symbol you see right here in the very top right of the card matches the other symbol, not the faction symbol, but the other symbol you can see on the land card, then you can add that opposing character, opposing companion for free. But if the symbol were not to match, you would have to pay the cost by spending as many resources from your Bane pool to your Bane discard pool. But let's say, as you can see right here, the symbol matches, so I can add this one for free. So let's just attach it to the land in a way that you can still see the symbol. So now the players take turns, because now we come to another action window, and the players take turns performing action, 1 action at a time, 1 player at a time. Now remember, you can, as an action, either play a card or use an ability of an already played card. Please, for the purposes of this video, this is a good time to mention that you should ignore the words resolution or danger if they appear on any of the cards that I'm showing you, because like I said, these cards are from the previous version of the prototype. So once the Destiny player begins, because Destiny player, like I said, always begins the action window, they choose whether they want to play a card or play an ability, resolve an ability. May I remind you, if the ability you want to resolve comes with this symbol preceding it, you have to place an exhaustion token, and then you cannot use it until that token is removed, until that card is cleared. And as let me remind you once again, because this is very important, you cannot add companions and or support to your party during the action window of the journey phase. You could only do that during the dawn phase. But during this phase, you can still help yourself by playing event cards. And whenever you play an event card, you're immediately to discard it, unless this is an event card that provides additional symbols for the attributes, which increases your party's strength. If that happens, you resolve the text as laid out here, and sometimes, yes, that can be negative. For example, here you would see you would receive 2 damage. how you receive damage, I'll show you in a minute, and that's not great, but you get 3 symbols. So for example, you get the event card, you put it right over here to make sure you attach it to the land you're trying to make the journey towards. And now you take a look again at all of your attribute symbols and whether you match the requirements of the land along with any opposing companions that the Bane player played over there. So for example, right here we are 2 symbols, 2 those symbols above, and 1 symbol and 1 of those symbols above the required symbols of attributes. So right now we're in pretty good shape. So again, what happens now is the Bane player takes their turn and they can play Bane cards from their hand, and those Bane cards can have a number of effects. For example, they can add even more symbols to those cards, because Bane cards are also one-time effects. You play them, you discard them. Unless this is the journey phase, during which once you resolve the effect, you then attach that card to the land to increase that land's difficulty. And play continues like this, back and forth, until both players pass, as in every other action window. Players will play event cards. The Destiny player will play event cards, the Bane player will play Bane cards, they will resolve those effects. If they come with attribute symbols at the bottom, those will be added to the land to either increase the party strength for the Destiny player or the journey's difficulty for the Bane player. Now, you do all that until you both pass. But before that happens, I need to tell you about few effects that can show up on the various cards that will be played. For example, this skull symbol. Skulls represent damage. Now for each point of damage you take, so for each skull symbol you receive, you have to destroy a card. Now the cards you destroy must come from either your hand or the top of your Destiny pool. The cards you destroy you then place face up in the Valhalla region. Now whenever a Bane card, for example, is destroyed, you then place those cards in the Niflheim region. But for damage, you always do it from the Destiny cards, so the Destiny deck or the Destiny cards in your hand. So now what happens is that if you were to destroy a card and you don't have any Destiny cards in your hand or in your deck, you immediately lose the game. So that's damage. That Intrigue symbol means that for each of those Intrigue symbols, the Bane player may place an exhaustion token on any of the opponent's cards, including cards that already have exhaustion tokens on them. In turn, the Elements symbol that you see right here allows the Destiny player to remove an exhaustion token from one of their cards. Now, one thing I should mention, that if you're like me and you really like keeping everything on your table nice and tidy, you may use those attribute tokens instead of placing cards underneath the land card. So, for example, if you play cards, event cards or Bane cards, that add either to the party's strength or to the journey difficulty, you can use those tokens to assign those instead. So, for example, if I was the Bane player and I resolved and I played this Bane card, which added 2 axes to the difficulty, instead of placing this card underneath, I can simply place those 2 tokens right here to remind everyone what's the current difficulty. Now, the opposing companion that the Bane player picked, that should stay here because you might have to dispose of it if the journey is successful. So it's a good idea to keep that card, in fact, underneath the land card. But for every other card, including any event cards that the Destiny player plays, you can simply place those symbols on your party and then place the event card to the side, like I said, to keep it nice and tidy. Now, once both players have passed, you check whether the journey was successful or not. Now, if the symbols that were seen right here as the difficulty were matched or exceeded by the symbols collected by the party, either on their cards or through the effects of various event cards, if that happened, the journey is successful. You had to either match it or exceed it. But if you were unable to match it, so the symbols you collected were, for example, even 1 symbol short of what was required, then the journey was unsuccessful. In either case, as of right now, you still do not remove any tokens from the cards. You do, however, place any played Bane cards and event cards into their respective destroyed pools. So for event cards, they go face up into Valhalla on the Destiny player's mat. For Bane cards, they go face up to Niflheim on the Bane player's mat. As for the opposing companion that the Bane player chose to add to the land, if the journey was successful, that opposing companion was unfortunately defeated and then lands face up in Valhalla. If the journey was unsuccessful, then the opposing companion returns to the Bane player's party. Now, if the journey was unsuccessful, nothing happens to the land card, it just remains in its horizontal position. If, however, it was successful, it gets flipped to its vertical orientation in a way where the horn is faced towards the player who performed the successful journey, and the Fenris symbol is faced towards the Bane player. Now, here we have a one-time ability that the Destiny player may choose to use. If they choose not to resolve it, they will not be able to resolve it later on. The Fenris, however, has an ongoing ability that can be used same as any other ability during the specific phase mentioned right here. Like I said, ignore the word resolution, it will probably say something like dawn or dusk. And also please remember about the exhaustion tokens, which you have to use once you resolve those abilities. Also please remember, if that was the third victory point, the player who performed the successful journey immediately wins the game. Well, that was quite a bit. I hope I didn't confuse you too much. Listen, now after we're done with all that, we come to this sort of cleanup phase where we prepare for the next round. So the Dusk Phase begins with the action window, which means that starting from the Destiny players, the players take turns performing actions. Now those actions can come from the cards, for example, for the Destiny player, from the cards in their party that have the word Dusk on them, from event cards that have the word Dusk on them, maybe from Bane cards that have the word Dusk on them. That's how you play and resolve those actions right now, one after the other. Next, after both players passed, the action window closes and we now come to the upkeep phase, where the Destiny player will have to pay upkeep to make sure that their cards can stay in their party. Now, each of those cards that have this little bag symbol, this is the upkeep cost of keeping that card in your party. So usually they differ from card to card, so I'm not going to go through all of them, but they're very clearly written. For example, here for THORGAL it mentions you have no more than 3 companions in your party. 1, 2, 3, I don't have more than 3, so I meet these upkeep conditions, THORGAL can stay. Here the upkeep says you have another bow symbol in your party, and the bow symbol is right here, which means he also gets to stay. And so on and so forth. You go through each of the companions where you see the upkeep symbol. Then you remove all of the attribute tokens from your card, return them to the general pool, but you only remove 1 exhaustion token per card from your cards. So if somebody played a trick on you and you ended up with 2 exhaustion tokens at the end of the turn, at the end of the round, you still have the 1 left, which means you will still not be able to use this card next round. Now the final stage of the Dusk Phase is to determine whether there are any cards remaining in the player's hands. Now if they are, then players have to decide whether to put those cards, and they decide for each card separately, whether to put these cards at the top of the appropriate pool, so either Destiny pool for the Destiny player or the Bane pool for the Bane player, or on top of the appropriate deck, so the Destiny deck for the Destiny player or the Bane deck for the Bane player. After they've done that, the pool that they have created that way remains here until the next round. So this is a good way to save resources to pay for cool cards next round. After you've done that, you take the discarded cards pile and you place it underneath the main deck. So discarded Destiny cards go underneath the Destiny deck, discarded Bane cards go underneath the Bane deck. No shuffling, you just slide them underneath. Finally, the players switch sides, and now the Destiny player will be the Bane player for the next round, and the Bane player will be the Destiny player for the next round. Unless, of course, somebody won the game, in which case the game is over. And that's really it. Next round begins, we swap roles, the Bane player becomes the Destiny player becomes the Bane player, and the game goes on until somebody wins. Now, the most common way to win is obviously to conquer free lands, therefore acquiring free victory points necessary to win. Another option, like I mentioned, is to deal damage to the player, deal so much damage that they cannot discard any more cards from their hand or from their deck. So these are the main ways. This is the main way, I would say, is the land way, but the conquering the land way, but obviously the defeating the player is also an option. Listen, this is really it. This is all you need to know to be able to play THORGAL, the card game, at least in the version as it is right now. Like I said, it's all subject to change, but I think that it's mostly going to stay, as far as mechanics of the game go, most of it is going to stay intact. And if you have some more questions as to how the game plays, some of the finer details, like I said, maybe my accent, maybe something else confused you a bit too much, please do not hesitate to ask. Either me or somebody from Lucrum Studio will surely assist you as soon as we get a chance. But as of right now, this is all I have. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Lucrum Studio, for providing me with the prototype and the possibility to explain the game to the public. Thank you. Like I said, the link to the campaign is in the description below. My name is Paweł Kaczmarek. You have been watching Geek Factor, and I hope I see you soon. Thank you, and bye-bye.